How's everybody doing? Y'all catch Baratunde last night?
Yeah, hilarious.
I'm not going to try and top that, but it was pretty good. Can't wait to buy his book. I'm from New Orleans, live in Atlanta, been around two populations that are 60% African American. Closest I got to being black is Carlton Banks, so I'm looking forward to buying that book. What we're talking about today is making Facebook local and relevant. 800 million people are on Facebook. It's pretty insane. There's literally a Super Bowl viewing party every day in the United States happening on top of Facebook, and there's a lot of challenges when it comes to figuring out how to harness those people and making them understand your brand and what you have to say, rather than just spewing out information to everybody that's not relevant. At that point, Facebook can become inundating and seem like a bear. So we're going to discuss some of the strategies that a small to medium-sized brand can utilize by talking to some of these bigger brands. And so on this panel with me right now, we have Kathleen Hester, who is a social media manager at Casemate. Young lady here with the blonde hair. Know Kathleen for about, I guess, a year and a half now. She is a rock star when it comes to figuring out how to take content, making it cost effective and efficient inside of Facebook. Secondly, we have Christina Blasdell, who works for CNN, and I assume you've all heard of CNN. She manages their digital content. She has quite the job when it comes to figuring out all of the world's news and making it relevant to local markets inside of not only Facebook, but Twitter and StumbleUpon and YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to talk about that with her. My name is Christien Louviere. I'm Director of Business Development for Vitrue. Is anybody familiar with Vitrue in the room? Cool. Doesn't count. So Vitrue, real quick, is a social media platform. We have brands such as McDonald's, Intel, Apple, brands that have massive presences inside of Facebook, where we'll harness 17,000 pages, all the content, all the streams that they have going on all their digital properties. So we have a really big workhorse platform. Getting into social by design and timeline is what I'd like to start off with. How many of you log into Google Plus once per day? 5, 6, okay. How many of you have let's say check-in fatigue on location-based networks? Okay, we're at a Geekend, so I'm gonna call this an anomaly, because most conferences I get to, hands are to the sky. And lastly, how many in this room actually watched the Super Bowl this year when I made my stat earlier? Okay, fair number. So there's 130 million people logging into Facebook every day, and that's one day of a Super Bowl. Think about that audience. That's pretty captivating. I'm not saying that Facebook is the only place to be, but it's 98% of the place to be. And if you're dealing with a restricted budget and you can't be every place at one time, you need to find a way to focus your efforts. One of the things, how many of you are familiar with Social by Design and the F8 announcements that came out? Sweet, that helps. So one of the things that Facebook is moving into is social by design in the timeline. And what that is supposed to do is take it away from X number of posts, Y number of times per day is going to get you this kind of engagement rate from your fans. Because what happens is McDonald's versus the local hamburger shop on the corner can't compete, because McDonald's can just hire a bunch of people to plug out stuff all the time. What the new timeline is going to do in social by design is to make content relevant. People are going to decide what's important, not the brands. And that's what you need to be cognizant of throughout the rest of this conversation. I want to show you real quick, jump out into my browser, what timeline is in case you haven't seen it. It's the only, so right here is my Facebook profile. You can see I have a cover photo now and my picture right there at the bottom. Totally different than what Facebook looks like now. This should be rolled out to everybody within a month. You can actually get on as a developer and set it up yourself like this. But this is what it's going to look like. I was with Facebook and a Fortune 50 retailer all day on Wednesday. They said this is the only product that they've released where they just had 90% yes customer satisfaction rates. Because when they've released newsfeed or they've shaken up everything, they get flooded with emails about this is terrible, why did you ruin it, you're a sellout, et cetera, et cetera. So this is pretty amazing. And what timeline is you can see how this feels totally different. For instance, today, my company's hosting an event in Vegas. I posted the invitation. I see something that's important. I can make this relevant. It actually posts to my timeline and becomes a large feed this way. But it's really tapping into people's lives. I can go down to when I was born, and I erased all this for your purposes, but it used to just be you tag a photo, you move on. You're now creating stories. It's kind of like a mini blog post, but I can go in here, edit the story, and create everything about the day I was born. I thought that was pretty neat, because before it was just tagging photos. This kind of freaked me out a bit, but if I go to 1989, it automatically populated when my sister was born. So this was the first day I logged in, and she's wearing a costume. She doesn't normally dress like that. But it pulled in her profile picture and pre-populated that data. Anyway, I thought it was kind of neat, and I can go on and on with these events. You can see at the bottom of each month and each year, it'll conglomerate everything I did that month and things like that. But why it's going to be relevant for brands is if you look right here, life event. I'm going to hit, which are living. Okay, home improvement. You buy your first house, you get married, you buy your first house. Home improvement, you want to put, I went to Lowe's, or I went to Home Depot, or I went to Ace Hardware. I bought this, I reviewed this, I loved this. And then not only do I have that going on in what's called frictionless sharing, so how many of you have Spotify? You've all seen it in the news ticker when it says I'm listening to, Bob is listening to. Well, now it's going to say things like Christian bought a rake, Christian sawed a whatever. But the point is, that ticker that you always see on the right side is going to let people figure out, do I really care or don't I? So it's not going to be in the news feed. That's extremely powerful to brands, because once I hit that I bought that product, then my friend can see it and they can pass it on. All of a sudden, that becomes relevant in the news feed, and Lowe's and Home Depot or whoever can capitalize on that information. It's going to be some pretty powerful stuff. So if you want to know how to set this up before it's released to the public, let me know. It's probably going to be in beta another month before they release it. It should be right before Christmas. It's pretty simple. You don't have to. I can't code anything, so I figured it out in about 10 minutes. So that's social by design and timeline. Next thing we're going to talk about is open graphs, edges, and I mentioned on frictionless sharing. So how many people are familiar with open graph and the concept behind it? A couple, okay. So everybody knows the like button, correct? All right. The point behind social by design is to make Facebook 360 degrees controlling of your world. How many of you heard of Ning before it went bankrupt? It went bankrupt. Why did it go bankrupt? Because you all have heard of it. If I went to a doctor's convention down the road, they've never heard of it, but they've heard of Facebook. So the next wave in social networking is going to be niche social networks. I was at a client on Wednesday. The problem they're having with their niche social network is they have got 700,000 people that have signed up, way up here, right? They've only got 10,000 who are logging in once per week. So those are going to go on and on and on like that until they figure out social by design. Because if you can add Facebook Connect, or you can add like buttons, or whatever the new edges are going to be, that gap's going to start shrinking. So does everybody understand what I'm saying when it comes to the Facebook login and things like that? My dad has an Excel file full of passwords and usernames, and he gets so mad at me because he's like, I don't want one more thing to remember, right? I told him about Facebook Connect and how you can sign up for that. He's on Facebook now because he can delete half the passwords he has. So I realize Mark Zuckerberg's trying to unintentionally take over the world. We may have to adapt at some point to that. So, and you know, I should point this out too, because we work out a lot with Facebook. I've been in the business side of it for 5 years. When Facebook started becoming a business and they started changing things and started commercializing it a bit, I saw a lot of poor customer satisfaction just because people were like, it's sellout, et cetera. What I love about the new version of Facebook that's coming out is they've listened. They've executed on how to make people's lives better and help them with their control their privacy. And you're going to see that with the new timeline sharing. Real quick on social by design and the new edges. By the way, I keep saying edges. I forget that not everyone knows what it is. New edges are the verbs. So for the past year, you could only say I liked something. Now you can say I want something. I bought something. They're even considering approving branded verbs. So Kathleen works for a casemate. They can say I casemated my iPhone. I guess if they want to allow, I don't know if they'll allow Google. We'll see what happens with that. I Googled something. We'll see what happens. But so it used to just be the like button. It's going to turn into to buy, to review, to want, etc. I was talking to a major clothing retailer, and I got so pumped up leaving the CMO's office because this guy's basically saying in 3 to 5 years he could almost rule out his email marketing database because he's going to start putting new edges with open graph objects on the checkout pages. So if Sally goes to his store online and buys a pair of shoes, she can just say, I bought this pair of shoes. That hits all 500 friends that she has in that news feed, and all of a sudden it's being pushed out that way. The only thing he loses from email to Facebook is the personalization of first and last name. But what he gains is data accuracy. Not many people lie too bad on their Facebook page. They might have multiple, but they're not lying too bad about it. I got like 99 email addresses for all these different companies. And the other thing he's going to gain is response rate. Email on a good day is what, 1%? Facebook, people are going to decide I like these shoes or I don't like these shoes. So I think that's kind of cool. And so anyway, McDonald's is one of our clients. This happened last night. It went live. I thought it was pretty cool. So we're talking about, it used to be like, Juan wants. This is live. This is people saying Charlie wants fries with. So the wants is the new edge that came out. So McDonald's is going to be able to target everybody who wanted something. And this is just the first iteration of it, but I think it's pretty damn cool that you're going to be able to do stuff like this. Because it used to be you have all these fans, but so what? You had all these likes, but what are you going to do with it? To me, this is going to really be a game changer. So, and I should point out for scale that we're managing roughly around 15,000 of those pages under one brand page for McDonald's. And so they're going to have that segmented by location, by verb, and on, as many ways as you can think about it. So that's the quick and dirty on the new changes. Casemate. So one of the reasons I wanted to have Kathleen on this panel is because she really is a rock star when it comes to managing an ad campaign and engaging her fans. She does things that Fortune 500 brands aren't doing that they should be doing. She's experienced tremendous fan growth with some campaigns, as many as 65,000 in 20 days. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I brought her here because I wanted her to be able to convey to you the things that you have to do and the misconceptions when people run engagement contests, sweepstakes, coupons on Facebook. There's a lot of errors and a lot of things people aren't doing efficiently. So Kathleen, maybe first talk about what the premise was of this UGC contest.
Sure. First of all, Casemate is a mobile accessories company. We make iPhone cases and cases for tablets and all sorts of other fun mobile objects. We started back in 2005 and it's in Atlanta, Georgia. We're still fairly new, but the company is really young and creative, which is one of the main reasons that I was excited to come and work for them about 8 months ago. And my goal was to take it from 10,000 fans to 100,000 fans. That's pretty much all that my CEO cared about at the time. So we, in the last year, partnered with a bunch of different music, fashion, and art events. We have a tool, a DIY tool, where you can design your own cases. And one of the audiences we were looking to hit, of course, was graphic designers. So back in July, we went to Comic-Con in San Diego, Comic-Con International, and we were hooked up with Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, who are better known as Jane Silent Bob. And they have a huge presence at Comic-Con. When they come in, they have to have security guards escort them onto the property because the comic book fans there are just rabid about them. I had seen some of their movies like Clerks and Mallrats, but had no idea how rabid their fans actually were. So we were excited. They had asked us if we wanted to do a design contest with them where their fans could design 2,000 by 2,000 pixel design, basically, that we would put onto an iPhone, and then in the end, Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes would pick their 3 favorites and sell them on their website. So the idea that was pitched to me at first was just get them to email us their designs and then we'll send them in at the end. And I was like, coming from the social media manager's perspective, how about we put this contest onto Facebook and Lightgate it so at least we're getting some sort of ROI from all of this. So we designed the tab, a UGC tab, and we launched it. We only had 2 weeks before they were going to announce the winners at one of their shows in Vegas. So I got it put together really quickly. We got it up and was expecting maybe to get about 30 good ones that they could actually pick from. I had no idea. We launched it with Facebook.
Was the overall goal though, like the number of case submissions, or what exactly were you looking for?
We were looking for submissions, of course, so that we had something to show. I was looking to gain a bunch of graphic designer fans that we could engage and have. I was hoping that they would look at the designs and go back and forth and just show how passionate they were. So during the contest, they uploaded designs, and every design that we got we would put into an album, and I would publish that once a day.
Yeah, and I should point out too, this is total UGC done on Vitrue's platform. It's not a plug, but we do enough of those that we can see what the average number of UGC submissions will be. It typically runs between 30 and 40. What were your KPIs and how many submissions did you get?
So at the end, we got over 250 designs, and not just any designs. Like, these were fabulous professional designs that we upload into the gallery every single day. People were freaking out if I didn't upload them every single hour, which was going to spam out the feed, so I told them every day at noon that I would post them. And by the end of the contest, we got over 55,000 new fans. 250 of these people submitted their own designs, but we got over 1.5 million newsfeed impressions, over 10,000 likes and comments on each of the individual entries alone. I was moderating the entire thing myself, and I was terrified about having to go through and find all the copyrighted things. The fans did it for me. They were like, this is somebody else's entry, here's a link to it, and I took it down. Or they'd email me and make sure that I knew everything that was going on. If someone wasn't from the right country, people were arguing and supporting each other, saying that they liked this design and that they loved that they incorporated this from this film and whatever, or if they weren't following the directions that they should have uploaded again. People were showing each other how to upload it if they didn't understand the directions, because people were from other. You
got 65,000 fans, and it was in how many days?
20 days.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. It was.
And can you disclose any of the? We'll get into this in a second, but can you disclose any of the cost per fan information or anything like that?
Sure. We did all of the ad buying ourselves, and mainly, I guess, we always have a 20% off tab that we put out product ads for, and we usually see between, I guess, 30 and 50 cents per fan, but contests definitely help, and I think the lowest that we saw was 10 cents per fan during the contest, and a huge, massive influx of fans, so we got a bunch of people for dirt cheap, I guess you could say. Nice. In the end. It was great. Everybody was really happy with the results.
Good deal. All right, and so that goes into, I'm sorry, I had a question.
So you said you advertised the contest?
Yes.
Yeah, and so it's a good point, because it was actually segueing into this is, Kathleen, talk about the Facebook ad buying and sponsored stories, and to the young lady's question here, discuss the misconceptions people have about running these fan engagements, and what, not the mistakes, but I guess what people don't know. So.
Yes, we definitely advertised the contest. Before this, I came from an agency and seen a lot of apps go out with no Facebook ad buy, and then I'd seen apps go out with a Facebook ad buy, and it's a no-brainer. You should always do a Facebook ad buy. We also had Kevin Smith tweet about the contest and post it on his own page. I would say about 50,000 of our fans came through our Facebook ad buy, and then another 5,000 came through what he had tweeted or posted on his Facebook page. It's very important. You'll see a huge rush in fans coming to the page the first few days, and then it'll get more expensive as time goes out.
Yeah, so. And I think one thing to point out too is, so whenever the tricky subject of buying your fans comes up into play, people are always, well, they're only in there for the free stuff and things of that nature. So whenever you run a campaign, when it's bought, after that campaign ends, you should look for an attrition rate between 1% and 4%. If it drops off below that, then there was something wrong with the way you targeted the ads because you weren't getting relevant people in the door. And just because you don't always have to do a buying activity to bring those people in, but it's on the brand's job that once they are there, that you're making the relevant content that's going to keep them, engaged with the brand.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Did your sales go up?
At the end, so Kevin Smith sold the cases on his website. I think they bought 3 different units of 100 cases, and they were sold out within 2 weeks, so they're ordering more now. They were really, really popular.
So your goal for this was just to get more Facebook
We-
followers, or was it to increase sales?
It was to build the graphic design community on Facebook and collect email addresses and just get them engaged and aware of CaseMate in general.
Okay, so it wasn't really a bottom line, increase sales.
Nope, I wouldn't say that. I mean, we did sell a lot of cases in the end, but that wasn't the main goal at all.
And we can talk about that more. It's really good questions, and we can talk about that more in the Q&A session when it comes to various points of ROI. Make sure you're identifying those KPIs up front and get out of the way of traditional media when it comes to this, because there's so many various ways that you can measure what's an effective sweepstakes or contest and get it back to sales at the end of the day. You just have to know how to break it down, and we'll discuss that some more. I always tell my clients, if you're going to run a sweepstakes or a contest, it's a party. Make sure you have the invites of people to know there. There's 800 million people out there. Like, you got to get their attention with something. So, last point I wanted to, Kathleen, I remember she told me that, or she actually just mentioned that from this first contest that they did, they had all these international users, and they kind of found, this is a great thing about Facebook, is they found all these little fishing ponds that they didn't know they had out there in other countries. And, Kathleen had to basically tell them, we're going to have another contest, which they did. But Kathleen, I was wondering if you can discuss a little bit about, general strategy on international and some of the passionate fan bases that you've told me you had and how you rein them into the brand so you can harness, capitalize off of it.
So we are an international brand. We've been selling through distributors all over the world, in China and in the UK. We're actually one of the #1 case brands in the UK. But at first, this contest, I'd only been there a few months. I just wanted to make it US only. I was assuming that Jay and Silent Bob were going to be the most prevalent within the United States and not as relevant overseas. But what I realized was that there are they have many graphic design followers that are friends with each other, and when they saw that they were entering this contest, they came to our page and were not happy about the fact that I left out all these other countries. There are actually tons of graphic designers I now know in Argentina and Venezuela and the UK and Canada that were not happy about it. So I ended up telling them after the fact that just go ahead and submit your entry. It won't be able to win the grand prize, but I'll make sure that it gets in front of Kevin Smith, and that kind of made them happier in the end. And then the next contest that we did, we made sure to include everybody. But we also, when I came in, these distributors that were selling our products had started tons of their own pages. So we had a CaseMate Europe, and we have a CaseMate Ecuador that actually had 30,000 fans, which our main page only had 10,000 at the time. So. And one of the difficulties that I was seeing was that when you search for CaseMate, all these other pages will pop up and nobody knows which one is the right one or which one will get answered and which ones are dead. So I've been having to go through, I've shut down a lot of the pages that aren't active. I just combined CaseMate Europe and the main CaseMate page, and I'm just making all my contents relevant to Europe and America. And as we open up, or as we have websites open up in other countries, then I'll be able to push out these messages using geo-targeted messaging and just focusing on all those other places. Have
you found like one tried and true method for reaching out to a passionate fan base and getting them to kind of work within the parameters of CaseMate? Or
what do you mean?
Well, so like if you had CaseMate Venezuela and CaseMate UK, you don't always want to say, hey, you have to come under our brand. I mean, how do you reach out to those people?
Well, I have access to all those pages, so I can, push out the messages now. That was one of the things that I made them do, or I was going to have Facebook shut it down. So at least I have control over them now.
Yeah, an interesting thing about, CaseMate, they're a really great company. They're not humongous, but Facebook's 800 million people. I'm sure it's more than that in reality, but that's what they're disclosing. 70% of the U.S. is on it every day. But of that 800 million, 70% of their users are outside the U.S. That's insane, and they haven't even hit China yet. South America, Latin America are huge markets for them. So, Yeah. Thanks, Kathleen. Jumping ahead into CNN. So Chrissy obviously is one of the leads up digital for one of the biggest brands. We discussed that. Obviously having content is key. One of the things I brought Chrissy in for, and I want to make sure that you can kind of apply these lessons to your brand, is talking about how to take just droves of content, because I'm a small business owner. I understand you get passionate about your own brand. You always want to see it do well, so you think everything you say is important. And it's not that it's not. It's just that everybody can only keep up with so many messages. And so that's kind of something Christina has to deal with on a daily basis. So that's what we're going to talk about here. And Christina, so I was wondering if you would discuss how you crowdsource a story as a way to figure out what's important to a user base, and then how you target those stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So CNN has a UGC arm, CNN iReport. We actually like to call it participatory storytelling. So the way that we use the main CNN page on Facebook to coordinate with CNN iReport is we have a pretty big net of people that we're able to hit, so that way we can geo-target and we can reach people that are really at the scene and get the most relevant pieces of content from them that we can then churn out and surface back to our fans and followers on social platforms to really create very relevant content when something's going on and there aren't a lot of journalists at the scene. This year's been a really big year for international political uprisings. Domestically, this week we saw some pieces of controversial proposed legislation introduced in states like Mississippi and Ohio. So getting in touch with people on the ground and getting thoughts and feelings of people that are very immersed in these stories is really valuable to our fans and to our audience. So it's a great way to geo-target and get that kind of feedback and then reshare it. But one big thing that I haven't mentioned yet that actually gets a ton of page views for us on our website and is also really important to audience and fans and followers is weather. So this can be hurricanes, this can be winter weather, winter storms, that sort of a thing. So that's been pretty big for us. And another way that we've been able to really incorporate that, especially on Facebook, is we have a group called Viewer Communications Management, and before even the introduction of social media, they really worked with our audience across platforms to see what the audience wanted to know, what kind of questions they had, what kind of concerns and needs that they had. And so they're able to work with us on the marketing side to tell us here's what people are asking, here's what they want to know, and we're able to make sure that gets surfaced. And they noticed a lot of people were contributing their tips and questions about things through the fan page. So we actually added the mechanism formerly known as tabs on there to collect tips. And in these situations with hurricanes like Irene or winter weather, like we had a couple of weeks ago in the Northeast, we're able to geo-target in those areas and say, hey guys, we want your tips, we want your pictures, we want your feedback. And this is primarily for people that don't want to be the citizen journalists that we have on iReport that we partner with and love. These are more people that just want to let us know and get that coverage out. So we're able to collect that information from them from our Facebook page and identify it as coming from that source. And it also helps us, when we're geo-targeting, be a source of goodwill. So when we have these weather situations, we're able to say, hey, there are escape routes and shelters here that you might want to know. So it's just good for us to make it more of a two-way and give back and create some social currency that way.
And a lot of interrupt you real quick. Going back real quick, I think a lot of people know about iReport at CNN and citizen journalism and things like that. Do you notice like a big disparity between those people and actually participating on Facebook and things like that? Is it two different audiences?
I think it's more of a threshold for what people want to do when we look at people that lurk on social media, people that click, people that will comment or like, versus people that actually produce content, like people that blog, people that produce video. So we try to have means for people of all desires, really. So if they just want to comment on a post, or if they just want to let us know about something, versus actually participating in iReport, so that we're sort of hitting all of those people. And with a lot of the breaking news events that I mentioned, too, it helps to be able to geo-target because we're not spamming people that aren't in those areas. And this really goes into the idea of content overload and managing expectations. So that way we aren't spamming them and giving them a lot of superfluous information. We're giving people domestically and internationally what they need and want to know, but at the same time, we're really giving people in those target areas the information that they want and need to know. So that way we're sort of meeting all of the needs at once. So going back to this idea of content overload, what we've noticed in our practices is that it hinges a lot on expectations. For instance, a lot of best practices that are published by Facebook itself will say, brand pages, people want to hear from you 3 times a day. Well, we have a lot of content to offer that people consider valuable, so the threshold for us is a good bit higher, and we can get away with a lot more before we see diminishing marginal returns on our posts or people complaining about spam, which we actually don't get a ton of unless it's content that they don't expect us to be covering. So it goes to the idea that people want to see hard news, and especially on social media platforms, they want to see a lot of tech news. If we were to post a story about Kim Kardashian, and when we occasionally do, we get a lot of really scathing feedback, and people don't want to hear it. So I feel like people's sense of content overload is what they expect from you versus what you are delivering on. And the idea that we can give people on Facebook a story about here's what the Facebook timeline is going to look like, that's social currency for them, but so is the sense of breaking news when we are reporting that Joe Paterno was excused, and they're among the first of their social base to know, and they can then share that to their friends. So the idea that we're providing them with that social currency as well.
And I think what's important to note, and I don't know if, I'll get to you in 1 second. See, I think what's important to note here is that I don't know if they were doing it on purpose or not at CNN, but what I talked about earlier with the frictionless sharing and the timeline, Chrissy's or CNN's best practices on that overload is what's going to be key in keeping them relevant moving forward, because they're actually taking a pulse already of what consumers deem important, whereas a lot of brands in the past weren't doing that. And so that's really important to consider. Go ahead.
So if I'm getting this straight, when you make a post, you're actually targeting a specific geographic region, and those people only in that geographic region are receiving that post?
It completely depends on what the post is. So if it's something that we think we want to make sure people in a certain area are very informed about, so for instance, winter weather in the Northeast, we will target that so that we're not spamming people that might consider that irrelevant. So a lot of our international fans might consider that irrelevant. 2, and I can touch on this a little bit later, is when we're marketing something and it's not available in certain cities or certain countries, we don't want to give people in those areas false expectations about what CNN content or functionality is available there. So this is sort of a way of using geo-targeting to manage expectations, essentially.
Next important part is we were talking, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I actually am really curious. You mentioned geo-targeting. You're talking about Facebook status updates and links and photos that you're sharing. I've never seen that functionality. Is it something that CNN has the ability to geo-target?
No, all pages have it. It's part of Facebook's native functionality. So in the box at the top of your page where you can post a piece of media or a status update, there's in the bottom right of that little box, you can customize, and you can actually even pick a language if you want to try to send something in Spanish, but you can select country, or if you're selecting the United States as your country, you can then narrow it to state or city. And it's actually inclusionary only at this point. So we did launch a marketing campaign where it didn't touch Japan, so we had to actually opt into the countries we wanted to see it versus saying all of Asia except for Japan. So it's not quite that sophisticated yet, but you're able to add areas anywhere from country to city of who you would want to see it.
Up here in front.
You mentioned citizen journalism. Are you vetting these people? Are you fact-checking?
Yes.
What they're intending to post?
Absolutely. On both features that I mentioned, CNN iReport is actually a pretty large community within CNN, so we have community managers there and people that vet iReports. They're sort of moderated in the sense of not having anything extremely offensive that goes on our site, but we try to get as much as possible on our site so that it's not censored per se, but as far as anything featured on air, it's fully vetted as far as somebody has called the iReporter and confirmed it was them that took the picture or recorded the video, that they are who they say they are, that this event actually happened, those sort of things. So yeah, anything that's specifically featured on our homepage or TV is thoroughly vetted, and a lot of the content that appears on the site is moderated.
Okay. One more slide, and we're going to get into some Q&A. .com versus social. So we were discussing social by design earlier, and that's really making your digital property social. Chrissy, again, going back into the amount of content that they get, she has to deal with this all the time, and they deal with so many outlets past Facebook, it's unheard of. So, Chrissy, I was just wondering if you could discuss, pretty much every news story you can find on CNN.com, but that's not the case on your social networks, and I was wondering if you could talk about the strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. We curate what goes out on our social channels, so we'll look at CNN.com, and what does well there actually differs a lot from what does well on our social channels, and even among those it differs. So we'll look at things like tech stories, for instance. We notice things about any sort of mobile advances, new phone or tablet launches, Facebook functionality updates. Those are the things that actually do the best when we talk about them socially. And because of expectations around hard news, we're pretty much committed to sharing that as well. And that's a big thing on Twitter, is having breaking news out there. So that's where we want to put a lot more breaking news and tech news is on Twitter. And we kind of pare some of that down for Facebook. And this goes back to the expectations of how much can you really talk to people before they're fatigued with hearing from your brand, which differs from what you see on Facebook to Twitter to StumbleUpon, which is our most recent experiment. They launched their brand channels about a week and a half ago, and to the kinds of content. So the way that StumbleUpon would differ goes back to the life of a link. On Twitter, you have a very short shelf life. For a link, it's very hard news and breaking news based. Facebook, you have a little more leeway. On StumbleUpon, it can go on for weeks. So that's what we try to be mindful of when we are sharing and surfacing our content there. So it's much more evergreen, like when our tech section does a story on the top 5 travel apps, or our health blog looks at, is breast cancer really related to diet? Those sorts of things. So really managing what people want to see on the various platforms and what kinds of content. And we'll notice that an entertainment story will do really well on CNN.com, but we know if we post it to Facebook, we're going to get a lot of scathing comments from fans. And sometimes it's a paradox, because we'll see that the story about Kim Kardashian's wedding might have been the most clicked on thing that we posted to Facebook that week, but it was also the most negatively reviewed piece of content that we posted. So we try to be mindful of that, knowing how people respond to things and what they expect to be seeing from us. And it too extends to what we're doing from a marketing perspective. If we're promoting a TV show, a lot of times they aren't aired internationally, so our specials we want to make sure to target domestically so that we don't get a lot of complaints and feedback from our international viewers who can't watch and participate. And with our marketing programs, we recently launched, how many of you guys are familiar with HBO Go or ESPN3? So CNN a couple months ago launched our version. It's literally live streaming linear television, and this was available on CNN.com and in our iOS apps. And we partnered with cable providers to do this, but we hadn't really completed the agreement yet with Time Warner Cable, for instance, in New York, which is a huge market. Cablevision, it wasn't available in LA, but we had all of these marketing pieces going out and a lot of this was non-traditional, or traditional rather, so newspapers. So people are seeing that they can get this functionality, and then they're going to our website and our apps, and they can't get it to work. So the idea that on Facebook you can really target to people who can use the functionality, and you're setting expectations and not talking about something to an audience that can't engage with it. Even going back to mobile again, our CNN International iPhone app not available in Japan, so we want to make sure that we're not talking to these people and telling them about something that's amazing that they can't use or access. So as far as keeping up relationships in that way too, geo-targeting's been a great tool for us, and we can do more with that than some of the traditional media as far as setting expectations and keeping them satisfied.
Okay, thanks, Chrissy. Jumping to Q&A at this point, I wanted to leave about 10 minutes or so. So any questions out there stirring us off, a few hands up that we bypass.